we're back again to look at Sue Plumtree's later stages. Now, if you've watched our first video, we've looked at the times in Sue's life before her marriage, during her marriage, why she got married, the mistakes that she feels that she made, and also the journey into understanding and loving herself and realizing that she was worth loving. So we're going to look a bit more at the journey now from Sue stepping outside the marriage and what happened during those years to bring her to the next stage of her life. So thank you again, Sue, for coming along.
Oh, I'm so glad I'm get the opportunity to share.
Well, it's just wonderful to see your enthusiasm and your joy, that comes out of you now. And I know that wasn't always the case. If you looked back at yourself maybe 15, 20 years ago, I think we'd be having a very different conversation.
Oh, very. It would have been complaining and blaming all of the way.
So, when you stepped, you made that choice, you moved into the spare bedroom, and then you discovered that you needed to forgive yourself. You chose to forgive yourself,
Mm.
which in itself is a story. We'll probably do a short video training on that. If you're watching and you're thinking, forgive myself, it's not my fault. It's their fault.
Mm.
And all of us can put our hand up to doing that. And I genuinely don't believe there's one single person who couldn't say that at some point they've blamed other people. So, Sue, when you made that, when you actually moved out now and you're separated, um, well, how did that change your sort of day-to-day life? And how did you feel in those early days after making that decision?
It was an amazing time. I had to learn to do things for myself that Bill used to do, including, believe it or not, cooking. Remember, I said that I hadn't stepped into the kitchen for about 20 years. I didn't even know how to boil an egg. Okay. So, but it was a learning process, very simple things. I used to work at the Institute of Directors in a team with two young men. And one used to be a chef, and the other one was very into food. And I used to say, Peter, how do you boil an egg or something like that? And he said, well, do this, do this, do this, do this. Great, try now. I remember the first thing I ever did, and it was a couscous dish.
Hmm?
I chopped some vegetables, um, put them in a bowl, added couscous, added hot water, waited 10 minutes, and I had a meal. And it was, oh my God. So it was baby steps, essentially. But the biggest thing, I lived alone for 10 years.
Right.
And it took another few, sometime coaching by Alan, when I wrote my autobiography. I didn't tell you that. I wrote my autobiography. It's called Dancing with a Mask, Learning to Love and Be Loved. And the reason I wrote it was because I wanted people to know that you don't have to stay in a place of pain. And the book ends when I turned 60.
Hmm.
But if anybody reads the book, they will realize that I left still blaming Bill for everything that had gone wrong. And so it took another year or two when I suddenly, out of the blue, middle of a coaching session, I realized that I wasn't the person I liked to believe I was,
Hmm.
that I wasn't the all-loving, all-giving, all-supportive wife that anybody would be grateful to have. And that Bill was the villain. Well, he was a jerk, no question. But I was not the innocent bystander either. And that was a very painful insight that I had been unkind, to put it mildly, on many occasions, born out of resentment. It's
Hmm.
like people who hurt tend to hit back, and I
Hmm.
did. But that was so liberating because it's for the first time I understood that I can only change myself. Because I tried for 37 years to change him and it doesn't work. But I could change myself.
Hmm.
And but I remember when I realized that I wasn't the kind of person I was, Bill had moved to Spain to live, and I wrote him a letter and I asked him to forgive me.
Mhm.
And I said something along the lines that all these years I blamed you for everything that had gone wrong. And I now realize that I was partly to blame and I'm really sorry. And he replied, which was by no means, I didn't do it to get a reply, I did it for me.
Yes.
But he did reply, and it healed us both, that letter.
Yeah. So
Yes.
it was another step for you to be able to move on, and also in a way to release him to move on too.
Yes. He was never meant to be married. What I didn't say is he was 30 to my 20,
Yes.
and he had never had a relationship before. All kinds of red flags should have popped up, but even if
Mhm.
they had, I wouldn't have noticed them or would
Yes.
ignore them because, you know, you don't want to spoil things. So we ignore red flags. Um, and he was a loner. He didn't need a relationship. But
Yes.
already I decided that he was just waiting for the right woman, and that woman was me. And I steamed ahead, you know. Um, so when he finally left, he was very happy. He
Mm.
did what he wanted to do. Didn't live in a home, in a house, didn't buy a flat. He lived in a bed and breakfast
Mm.
where he didn't have any responsibility for cleaning or cooking or anything. And he did what he wanted to do. And I remember thinking he became a blogger on
Oh, right.
something that
Okay.
had intrigued him for many years.
Hmm.
And I was included in, amongst 20 million other people. My name was on it. That's why I knew what he was up
Which
to.
was, mm.
And I used to think that he should be grateful that I left him because he lived his last 9 years of his life doing what he really wanted to do.
Which you really wanted. Yeah. So it was a release for him. So in those next 10 years, in fact, the first question I'm going to ask you is, are you going to write a sequel?
No, I want, well, my blogs, my
What?
courses, there I share everything that I've learned, rather than writing a book. It takes a lot of time away
But
from connecting with people. I want to connect with people.
yes. Yeah. So you're now having been through such a big life change and taking action on it, because again, there's a lot of people out there who will watch, self-help video, read self-help book after self-help book, and nothing will change because they either haven't been prepared to take action or they haven't had that crucial support next to them with somebody who will help them to take action, because many of us are not good at taking action on our own.
No.
Left to our own devices,
Mm,
it's like how many people have started a diet on your own, you
yes.
know, and by the end of the week, you've decided to just start again on Monday or whatever. I mean, it's just the way of the world. So it's no different with any other big changes. I don't know why we think it is actually. Why you think that you can make some changes on your own and not others. So you'd had the support, you'd made those changes, and something was growing inside of you that meant you couldn't keep this to yourself.
Well, what actually happened gradually was that I looked back with the benefit of hindsight to my marriage, trying to figure out what went wrong, what was missing, what I really wanted. And I gradually learned to know myself. I learned what did I need to feel loved?
Mm.
What were my deepest needs? I had no idea. I think most people know what they don't want,
Mhm.
but they don't know what they do want. So every time I ask a client, so what do you really want? Well, I don't want this and I don't want, no, slow down. What do you want? People don't know. And partly it's to do with they don't think they deserve it
Mhm.
because so far too many, including me, felt not good enough or deserving enough.
Mhm.
Because once we know that we deserve it, we wouldn't tolerate, what is thrown at us, taking us for granted, things like that. They wouldn't tolerate it.
Mhm.
So I learned in those 10 years, I learned to got to know myself and to like myself. And I learned to accept who I was while still moving on and continuing to learn. The most important one, I learned to respect myself. An old-fashioned word, but to respect myself, to know what I deserved, how I expected people to treat me, and to put a stop to it when somebody crossed the line. And that means having personal boundaries. First, knowing what they are and then enforcing them. And that is a journey, it takes forever. Asking for what we need, for what we want, and saying, oh no, they're not going to give it to us anyway, so why bother? Or be so tentative that the other person doesn't understand what it is that we are asking.
Yes. Yeah, I mean that's a big one. Almost apologizing that you are asking for it,
Yes, absolutely.
and putting so many uh, get out clauses in the way of the person that
Yes,
there's no way that they're going to be able to do what you want them to do.
yes,
The other thing
exactly.
I've noticed is a propensity to make hints for what they want. So if you don't respect yourself and you don't feel that you deserve support or help or whatever it is you're asking for, often um, I've seen people just sort of hint at it. Wouldn't it be nice if you did
Yes.
this? And that's very frustrating for the other person because they're sitting there thinking like, well, it probably would be nice, but it'd be nice if somebody did that for me too. There's no kind of, like you say, there's not a proper shape to it, is there?
It's something like if you loved me, you would know without me having to tell you.
Yes. And you've never even said it, you've never even expressed this particular. Actually, there's a story there because my dad was 10 years older than my mum. And they met shortly after the war. Oh no, yeah, shortly after the war. And mum was teacher training at the time, and dad was a teacher. And she could see that he wasn't. He didn't. You could see he didn't feel loved. He'd grown up in a family with a very abusive father, so he was very. It affected him deeply, and she sort of took him under her wings. Really, he became somebody that she wanted to look after, and she wanted him to know that he was loved. Anyway, they fell in love. They got married, but Dad was never really believed in himself, and you could see that by the way he allowed other people to treat him.
Yeah.
And he really desperately wanted to make sure that we didn't experience what he'd experienced with a father. Um, but he would often hint. He would often hint at things rather than saying it. And then one day, when he was made redundant at the age of 62, and my mum at this point was 51. She was running the most popular playgroup in the area. She was a church elder. She was a chair of governors at the school. She was Sunday school superintendent. She did all of, for her, she had come into her own. All the children, 8 children had grown up. And now she was in a place where she was feeling she was exploring her other giftings and they were being valued. And then he suddenly announced that it had been his lifelong dream to own a small holding in the country, and they should up sticks from where they were, and they should move to a little village in the country, find a house there, and he could have a small holding there. Now she had never once heard him ever talk about this dream. Never once had he ever mentioned.
Wow.
But he just assumed that she would know, that would have been his dream, and that she would be able to just up sticks and go. And that was probably the most sticky time of their marriage because for the next 3 years, my youngest sister was still at school. And in his eyes, they would move as soon as she left school. And mum just couldn't do that. It had never been her dream. And it had never been something that she even heard about, never
Mm,
mind, wanted. But he just assumed it. Um, so they had a very sticky few years and then they worked through it. But that's, I think that's probably quite common
mm,
in relationships where you think that the other person actually knows what you want.
mm. Yeah, yeah.
So once you were on your own, and now you're sort of fully in control of your life, really making choices and things. Um, what started to happen to you with your relationships with other people? Because now you actually had begun to respect yourself, to love yourself, to
Mm.
nurture yourself. What began to happen in your relationships with others?
Well, I'll tell you, the old ones fizzled out.
Right.
Because what happens is we see each our in context with other people. An easy example would be you are nice and slim because your friend is fat, or you are fat and your friend is slim, and then you lose weight, and therefore your friend isn't special anymore because now you're both slim and attractive, and that can get in the way. So when we change, what happened to me is I used to be poor Sue until I stopped being poor Sue, and
Yes.
they didn't like it. And so a lot of the people in my life just fizzled out. And
Right.
it just was perfect because
Hmm.
I had grown away. I went back to school. I became qualified. I had left school when I was 14.
Hmm.
And then I became a mature student. And and I was so excited, felt like sleeping beauty waking up to all this amazing knowledge. And then people who knew me, oh, you're so masculine. And they just drifted away.
Yeah.
And then these amazing people started coming into my life. I mean, wonderful people. They're still in my life.
Yes.
And I couldn't understand why. How come with my history, these amazing people in my life? And then I saw a video, a TED talk by a woman called Brené Brown. Have you heard of her?
Hmm. Yeah.
She did a talk about vulnerability. And I realized why these people were coming into my life. I had stopped pretending I had it all sussed out. I started making myself emotionally vulnerable. I
Hmm.
allowed myself to be seen. It took a long time, but I got there. And I understood what was happening. I understood that if I stop pretending, so can they.
Yes.
And that's why developed this really close, intimate relationship, friendships. And I
Yes.
got what I really wanted more than anything, which was to be loved.
Yes.
I had it. And I wrote my autobiography, set up my coaching practice, um, which I've been doing since 2005, pretty much after I left the Institute of Directors. And
Yes.
um, and I went on adventures, and I had so much fun.
Fabulous.
It was great. I thought I had everything I wanted ever.
Yes.
Um, and my last adventure was in 2015 in November. I went to Turkey on a paragliding holiday.
Wow, that's amazing.
It was glorious, absolutely glorious experience. And as I said, I just totally fulfilled. And then 2 weeks after, I met a man called Dave who turned out to be my soulmate and the love of my life. And this
Yes.
and together we did and continue to create the most amazing relationship. It's unbelievable. Um,
Well, do you know what? I'm going to pause there because I want to spend some time looking into that and the difference it's made into your new relationship. Because when you started to love and accept yourself, you didn't do it with a view to getting married again or finding another partner.
no,
And I
no.
know that you support and help people to build relationships with themselves, with others, with or without a partner. So I'd really like to come back if you're listening, and you haven't heard Sue's story from the beginning, so you don't know what happened and what took her into the marriage, and then these 10 years in between where she was discovering herself again, building new relationships, paragliding, at the age of 60, that's amazing. So come back and watch our third and final video and discover the difference it's made to Sue in her new relationship and also how they've set that new relationship out, because there's a story to that too. So
Yes.
thank you again. Thank you again for coming along, Sue. I'm going to enjoy hearing about the last chapter.
Oh, thank you.